Hi there and welcome back to my channel. This is Sean, the Honest Book Reviewer, with another book review. In this video we're discussing The Horror at Pleasant Brook, written by Kevin Lucia. It's a horror. There are two things I like about this book. One is it's more of a full tilt horror. There's blood and gore in the book. Now it's not to the extremes of splatterpunk. So splatterpunk is a genre where there's really extremes in the blood and gore elements in the stories. This book goes to a certain degree, but not to splatterpunk degree. So it's not like Richard Lehman in that respect, but the blood and gore is there and the author doesn't hold back. So I like that in this story. The second thing is the 80s vibe. I got an 80s vibe from this book. Even though the book is set in present day, well, in recent times anyway, the book felt like more of an 80s type style story to me. That's maybe because of the evil being driven by masks. So these characters in masks are driving the evil in the story. It made me think of Friday the 13th and Halloween, that type of thing. I love those franchises and I like the way that kind of feeling was in this story as well. Also the way some of the scenes played about in this story just felt like those kind of scenes in those movies to me as well. That's where I got the 80s vibe in this book. But for those two reasons, I really enjoyed this book. The action in this book is set in a small town called Pleasant Brook. This is a type of isolation horror, I think, where the setting is isolated from the rest of the world. So in this case, it's a setting of a small town. Sometimes it's a single house, sometimes, maybe a neighborhood. But in this case, it's a small town isolated from everywhere else. And there's a big evil going on in this small town. The overall plot takes place over a few days, so it's not a sudden thing in the story. But it is very powerful because of the isolation factor. And the isolation factor remains there for a few reasons, which you'll find out when you read this book. But I enjoyed that part of the story. That isolated feeling just increased the feeling of dread and horror and suspense in this story. Also increased the terror because you've got these people trying to survive in a small community where most of the people in the community are falling victim to this great evil. So it just adds a lot to the overall story in that setting. Without giving too much away about the book, the evil in the story is driven by these masks. Well, one person putting on one mask and it drives from there. Also feels like a bit like a vampire story in some way. Some elements there kind of match vampire stories because it's one person who begins it all, then kills/infects other people. And that just progresses through different people in the town in the same way. So you've got these people connected and they're all linked to this first person who was the first person to put on the mask. So in that way, the evil feels vampiric in nature. The evil also feels like a possession type thing. I don't know if it's demonic or a spirit or a ghost, whatever it is, but all ties into that as well. It's also linked to folklore and mythology, things going on in history. So all these different elements are playing a part in this horror. So I like that in the story as well. It feels complex in that construct and it feels well done. So different elements meshing together to make a unique feeling horror element that plays well in this book. This book also follows a small group of survivors in the book. They're trying to stay ahead of the evil, trying to work out what it is, how to stop it, how to destroy it, also how to stay alive. They've got choices in the book as well. And I like the fact that they have these choices because it makes it feel more organic, more real. They think about leaving town and going somewhere else. They choose not to because they think if they do, evil will spread elsewhere. That's good in this story because it shows these characters are more real because they've got a choice to make. They make a choice and stick to it. And I like that in this story. I like that whole construct. Also, these characters feel real because they're trying to work it out. They don't know the answers. They're kind of fumbling along, trying to stay alive and work out what's going on. I like that as well because it makes all the characters feel more organic and real in the story. Despite having this kind of 80s vibe going on the way the story is told, the story is set in modern times, so it's set during the COVID pandemic. And you're told that in the story again and again. It is repetitive, it becomes too much in the story actually. Basically every character thinks about it, thinks about what they thought about, online learning, online meetings for work, the isolation laws going on. Every character thinks about it and has a view about it. It's repeated time and time again. So it's a bit much in the book, I think. Sometimes I think it's risky because if you repeat it so many times, readers may assume the author's trying to think or convey certain messages about that in the story. So I think a bit of a risk to do it. I don't mind the fact the story is set during the COVID time because the COVID pandemic is such a big thing in recent history. Of course we'll have stories set during that time. It's used because it adds an isolation factor of its own, because characters are isolating in their homes, so it makes them more vulnerable to this evil going on in the town. That's the reason why I think it's set during the COVID pandemic. And I like that aspect in the story because it just adds something to it. It adds more of an isolation factor because we have the town being isolated, then everybody else being isolated as well because they don't want to leave their homes. So a good use of modern history in a story, I think. But maybe just ease up on the kind of personal views that each character has on that because it got repetitive and it kind of drowned out some of the other elements going on in the story. Also in this story that's a bit overdone is there are so many characters who are either alcoholics or in AA. It just seemed like for a small town, a huge number of the population was having this thing going on in their lives, and it just felt like it was overdone. If you want flaws in characters, fair enough, just vary them a little bit. Not every character needs to have the same flaws, so a bit overdone in this book, and it did impact my read of it a bit in this story. Grace is the sheriff in this story. Now, I'm not sure if sheriffs in the US are sheriffs of towns or counties, but Grace is the sheriff. She's an okay character in some ways, in other ways, not so much. As a character, as a law enforcement character in this book, she felt a bit useless. She felt like she didn't know what was going on, didn't know how to handle the situation. That's what I got in this story. Also, I didn't get so much her reactions to what's going on horror-wise. They weren't that strong. I get the fact that she was trying to be action-oriented. I like the fact that she was trying to take charge. She felt a bit kick-ass as a character. I think a lot of readers will engage with her because of that. But I needed something more about this character. This character just felt a bit not balanced to me. There was something there that wasn't right about the character. Scott is a 13-year-old character in this book, one of the survivors who was trying to get to the heart of the evil and stop it. As characters go, I thought he was written to feel older in the book. For me, most of the book I felt he was 16 or 17, not 13. That was strange to me. If you're going to have a character that acts and speaks and does things in a certain way in the story, make him older, because it just felt like the characters, everything about the character felt like he was 16 or 17, not 13. For me, that's a miss. But apart from that, his character was good. He had a well-rounded character. He had a good history. He had good, thoughts and emotions and reactions going on in the story. But they all felt like thoughts, reactions and emotions of somebody who was a bit older, not 13. Sage is the town librarian in this story. Also one of the people trying to survive in the book. She's good in the book because of her wit, her cynicism, those little quirks she has, one-liners sometimes in the story. She's there for a few scenes. She's one of the support characters, so one of the big characters in the story, but not a major character in my view. She stands out for a few things in the story. She feels good as a character, but not like a fully complete character. Again, it feels like there's something missing from her character in the story. I got more of a reaction about what's going on horror-wise from Sage than other characters in the story though, so in that way, a good character for this book. I think this story will offer a lot to horror fans. It's got blood, it's got gore, it's got suspense and tension, it's got a good evil, it's got a good structure to the evil as well, what's going on in the town. Having a town isolated adds more dread to the book as well. The atmosphere is quite good in this story, and some of the events going on are really well done in the book as well. So I think a lot of horror fans will be drawn to the book because of that. I rated it a 3 out of 5. Myself, I just found it, while I like the horror elements going on, I found it a bit repetitive in certain ways. So I think take out some of that repetitive element and just flesh out things in different ways would make it a better read. On my channel, I review many horrors. If you enjoy horror, check out my channel and subscribe. On the screen now is a link to a video for another book I'm sure you'll enjoy.